Good morning and welcome to the Patriot Radio News Hour. Happy Friday. Yeah, we made it through another one. It's like the days of our lives, and every day Wall Street hemorrhaging back and forth, and today it was back again. Right now the Dow's down 375 points. Just what you wanted to hear as you're getting ready to enjoy the weekend. The Masters golf tournament is going on. The Diamondbacks are red hot. 6-1 right now. And of course, it's a gorgeous day here in the Valley of the Sun. I'm Joe Jaquin, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group. I'm going to tell you, listen, I'm not going to yell at you, scream at you. Well, I may get a little fired up today, but not at you. But you better get your house in order. You better get your financial house in order. You know what's coming. We see the volatility. Now, the Dow's moving, forget about 100 points every day. It's moving 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700 points a day. When we see volatility like this, you know, when the markets are getting ready to roll over, right? We saw it in 87. We saw it during the .com. We saw it again at the financial crisis. This is just what happens, right? This is your little warning sign. 800-951-0592. That is our toll-free number. Legal, lawful, constitutional tender. Gold and silver. We do it better than anybody. We've been doing it for over 2 decades right here. One of the longest, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what the longest running radio show is, but we've been here 22 years, been doing this. Maybe even 23. I don't know how to count anymore. The website at allamericangold.com. And I love Ramon, who posts the stuff up there. Yesterday we got a little snippet of Jeffrey Gundlach. Today he's got the whole 18 minutes. It's worth listening to. And this is one of the reasons why, when I tell you about, there's only a handful of people you really need to listen to. But Larry Kudlow ain't one of them. Right? Hey, Larry, go back to TV. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to it. I'm getting ahead of myself. I will say this. I told you the other day about how I'm in this Masters pool because, you know, me and my buddies, we all used to play on a men's league basketball team together. I know some of you that seen me now are like, what? I used to be okay. You know, I wasn't great. I was pretty good, though, about 85 pounds ago. But we can't do it anymore, right? We're old. So now we gamble on sporting events with each other. I mean, that's what we do. So we're in this Masters pool, and you pick golfers, essentially. You pick this guy, you pick that guy. One of the guys that I picked happened to be Sergio Garcia. I don't know if you saw it. Here it is, the one of the majors in the PGA. He got a 13 on one hole. He put his ball in the water like 5 times in a row. I couldn't believe it. I'll tell you this right now, though. It did make me feel better about myself. See, if the pros can do it, even can I. But that was just kind of my luck, right? So just keep that in mind. I sent out a text to my buddies. I'm like, I didn't know I picked Roy McAvoy. If you ever saw that movie Tin Cup. Yeah, but the first time ever, I've never done any a golf thing before. None of us had. Yeah, so there you go. Anyway, 800-951-0592. What an incredible really every day. You just don't know what's going to happen. So we had jobs out today. Brutally bad number. Even I was shocked at it, but I'm going to explain it to you. It wasn't good, but it's not as bad as it seems. But what I like to do, you know how I like to do it. Forget all the BS and all the headline. Of course, if you believe what you heard on TV, you think we're creating 1 million jobs every month and it's the best jobs market we've ever seen in the history of the world. I'll lay it all out for you. So don't worry about that. We had more trade talk, now another $100 billion of tariffs coming on the Chinese. We have the Chinese firing back in their state-run media. I'm just going to say this. Remember what I've been telling you. It's all about China knows there's no way the United States is going to be able to handle the heat. They better get out of the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? Their finance minister came out on Twitter, I guess, or maybe the Chinese equivalent of Twitter, about how the Chinese people, they're going to rally around us and we'll take the pain. It's got something like 4 or 5 million likes already, just to let you know how big of an issue this really, really is. And let's face it, this is something that you can flat out thank all of these big corporations that are about ready to get their lunch handed to them. They were the ones that lobbied for all this stuff. They didn't care that China was cheating. They didn't care that China was stealing their intellectual property. They didn't care. It's not like they started doing this stuff last week. And now, of course, we finally got somebody that wants to do something about it, and we're going to see. I'm going to tell you exactly. I've been telling you how it's going to play out. I'm going to tell you exactly how it's going to play out. Got all of that coming up. Don't want to miss it. Patriot Radio News Hour. We're going to be right back after the break. We all must love being lied to and misled and have a whole bunch of hot air blowing up our backside, because when you really sit down and you look at, forget about all the survey stuff, and you forget about all the people coming like Kudlow and his pot of gold and all that nonsense. You just look at the numbers for what they are. It's a very simple picture. And it really goes to show, you remember the other day I was talking about how it used to be, all right, the minimum wage workers wanted $15. Now all the teachers are starting to strike everywhere. Arizona's getting ready. They just had, something like 1,500 teachers down at the Capitol building. They're getting ready to walk out because they can't afford to live. The tech people, right? The tech, that was the new economy, right? You had to be a computer programmer. If you're not a techie, you're going to be left behind. They can't afford to live where the jobs are. Why do you think that is? So let's get to the numbers. 103,000 jobs created in the month of March. You missed it, essentially. It was half of what they were hoping for. Way below what the expectation was. But again, let's filter out the noise. They revised January, by the way, which was, remember January? Right? The great jobs number that was going to cause all the wage inflation and everybody started freaking out. Well, they revised that jobs number down just a little bit. Just a pinch. 65,000 of those jobs disappeared, from 239,000 to 176. The good news was February. They added 13,000 to February's number. February's number was 326, and then of course the 103 from today. And you just kind of average it out. We're creating about 200,000 jobs a month for the first quarter. Okay, and obviously when you look at it, some of February's jobs probably should have been March jobs, and it average washes in the wash. 200,000. Do you know what we created the first quarter of the year before? Just, for comparison's sake, right? 182. So It's a little better. It's the first year in 4 years that it's a little better, but not by much. Right? We've kind of got the same economy that we had last year and the year before and the year before that, despite all the great, the tax cuts and all that. Right? It didn't happen. But here's the part where it gets a little more tricky. And this is why are we seeing, right? It made sense to us, and I think to everybody, that the minimum wage worker wanted more money. Right? Because they were mostly working what? Part-time, multiple jobs. They're your McDonald's workers, your Taco Bells, right? Your waiters, your waitresses, your dishwashers, all that stuff, right? Your retail baggage clerks and all that stuff. But now we got teachers, tech workers. All of a sudden we've got this massive movement, and it really boils down to this. Take this last month, okay? 103,000 jobs total. When you take all the job losses, all the job gains. But here's how it broke down. Part-time jobs up 310,000. Full-time jobs down 311,000. It's pretty simple, right? Not all jobs are created equal, and unfortunately, the jobs report doesn't tell you that. It just says a number. The number could be anything. Doesn't matter if it's 103 or 326. It doesn't. If it was 103,000 full-time jobs created, that would matter. Instead, what we find out from these reports, all the job growth gains, not all of them, there's some full-time work. It's all part-time work. Right now, how many times have I said it? Who are the real heroes of this economy? And it's all of the people out there that are working 2 and 3 and sometimes 4 jobs. They're the heroes. I mean, because this is really what they've done, right? They don't want to pay benefits. They don't want to pay insurance, right? They don't want to do any of that stuff, and so they create all of these part-time jobs all over the place. Big article today on CNBC. More and more tech workers can't afford to live where they work. Neither can teachers, and nor can first responders. Barely a decade after the worst housing crash in history, home prices are soaring. Remember why, right? Just remember why that is. Why is that? Who bought all the homes? Wasn't you and I. Right? First-time home buyers doesn't even make up 30% of the market anymore. Why? Because they can't afford them. Right? Wall Street owns all the real estate. Home prices are soaring. Fewer buyers are able to afford any homes. In fact, a growing number of Americans, including tech workers, who are paid relatively well, right? That's the new best job in America, are unable to live in the same communities where they work. Teachers, first responders, restaurant workers, computer programmers, having the hardest time affording a home near you, and more importantly, near their job. And they talk about California, right? We know that. But it's not just there. Barely half of programmers in Chicago, in Charleston, South Carolina, in Minneapolis, in that great metropolis known as Newark, New Jersey, can afford to buy a median-priced home. That's just the average, right? Hey, I want a regular house. Newark, wait, right? Arlene's from Jersey. She knows Newark. No, hey, it's Portland, Oregon, Miami, Denver. By the way, do you know how much a person would have to make to afford the average home in Denver? $100,000 a year. Yeah. And that's just, forget it, you're not living in a high rent district at that price. You're just living, barely above average. Well, right at average. Arizona, it's a little better. You only got to make $82,000 here. And this is what is happening. Whether you want to admit it or not, these are the realities. This is why when you go out to allamericangold.com, I'm going to lay it all out for you real simple today. And I know we got the big Chinese trade war and all that brewing. But remember and think back. Think back to when Eric and I were doing the shows together, and he was talking about first and way ahead of his time. Like 0405, he was talking about 15. Right before he stopped, and was getting ready to retire, he said, forget 15. It's got to go to 30, talking about the minimum wage. Right? The cost of a Big Mac. Right? The combo meal at McDonald's has got to go to $20. Right? I don't know what it is. I don't buy them. But I want to say it's like $8 or something like that today. And why he said that, and everything, right? Gasoline's got to go to $5, right? All that stuff. Housing prices, right? They got to go, right? Average new home's got to go to, $1 million. Because they've created this huge, huge debt burden that all of us are saddled with, and now nobody can afford it. Right, where we're taking away full-time work, replacing it with part-time jobs, and we're calling it prosperity. Think about this. Go back to history, because it's been ingrained in our psyche, because they repeat it all the time. Go all the way back to the Great Depression. What do they tell you was the reason why it was so bad? Right? Don't they always, it started with the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. Of course, really started with Wall Street crashing in 1929. But they said, the tariffs were the reason why it got super bad. Now, think about what's happening today. Okay? We got Wall Street that's way overvalued, even after the greatest tax cut they've ever seen in their lives. And we've got a trade war. Then remember, that was in the early 30s. Most people don't remember this part. After about 4 years, the Federal Reserve claimed they fixed it. And they started raising interest rates in 1937. And by the time we entered World War II, we were back in recession. So think about today, right? We had, they call it, what do they call it? The Great Recession, right? Instead of the Great Depression, because that one was already taken. So we didn't have the tariffs. They decided what they said the solution was. As a matter of fact, Ben Bernanke wrote his book, The Courage to Act. Remember, he was the expert of the Great Depression. And he said what they should have been doing was printing up debt like crazy, right? Which is what they did. And, of course, what happened? About, 2013, they claimed they fixed it. 4 years later, what's happening? They're raising rates. They're selling their bonds, right? The Federal Reserve's getting rid of some of their bonds. Raising rates is tightening. Selling bonds is tightening. Oh, wait, now we've got a trade war on top of it, right? The tariffs. And quite honestly, the economy really, even with the Trump numbers, at best, we had a 3% GDP economy at best, right? First quarter, we'll know next week or in a couple of weeks here what first estimates are, but it's somewhere around 2.5. What do you think's going to happen? Right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. Right? And, of course, they told us that they were never, ever, ever going to make the same mistakes again, and yet here we are. Now we're going to double up on it. Now, part of the problem is, right, we actually need to try to get some of this stuff back. Right? I mean, China's got all the tech jobs, all of them. I mean, we've got headquarters, right? You got Apple and you got Amazon, and they've got a token amount of programmers working for them. But don't mistake it. It's all over there. And now all of a sudden, none of us can afford to even live here anymore. Patriot Radio News Hour, halftime on a Friday.
This is the Phyllis Schlafly Report, presenting a daily conservative pro-family perspective since 1983 and continuing the legacy of Phyllis Schlafly. Now, here's the president of Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, Ed Martin.
As talk about tariffs engulf much of our news, many are left asking, just what is a tariff and what does it do? Tariffs are much like the out-of-state tuition that state colleges charge students whose families have not supported the college through taxes. Most state colleges require out-of-state students to pay more, and most people fully support that sensible requirement. Similarly, tariffs help level the playing field between those who employ Americans right here and offshore manufacturers that escape the extra burdens and costs of operating a business in America. Requiring those foreign companies to pay more for the privilege of selling to American consumers is perfectly logical, given how the foreigners have not been paying American taxes or complying with our regulations. The resistance to tariffs comes from the same never-Trumpers who assured us that Trump could never be nominated nor elected. White House Trade Policy Director Peter Navarro noted that nearly all other presidential candidates opposed Trump on trade. But guess what, Navarro said? He beat them. 30 years ago, when Donald Trump was in his early 40s, his views on trade were much the same as they are now. He told Larry King back then that he was, quote, tired of watching other people ripping off the United States, end quote. Trump even told Oprah, I'd make our allies pay their fair share. Trump even told David Letterman that nations such as Japan have totally taken advantage of the country. I'm talking about the trade deficits. They talk about free trade, but they dump cars and everything else. Democrat Senator Joe Manchin, who supports the Trump tariffs, observed, free trade hasn't worked well for West Virginia. Maybe that explains why Trump carried West Virginia with 69% of the popular vote, a whopping 42-point margin over Hillary Clinton in that formerly Democratic state. Just as entrenched politicians in D.C. have blocked Trump's efforts to build a wall, they also protest too much at his effort to impose a few tariffs. Yet the approach of a tariffless society has been a catastrophic failure for the American worker. So it's time to try the approach that originally made our country great.
This has been the Phyllis Schlafly Report from Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. For the U.S. economy to flourish, free enterprise needs to be rewarded. Competition and capitalism need to be encouraged. At phyllisschlafly.com, you'll find alerts and strategies for strengthening our economy and standing against socialism. That's phyllisschlafly.com. Thanks for listening, and join us again next time for the Phyllis Schlafly Report.
Welcome back, Patriot Radio News Hour. The Dow is now down 450 points. And again, it doesn't matter. You better get ready. Because it's really very simple. The Federal Reserve who never creates a single problem, right? They only come up with solutions. Created and allowed, very similar really when you think about 1929, right? What really happened? And the answer was simple. Banks took way too much risk and got slapped. Right, and some of them will even get very specific and point to copper trades as the downfall. It doesn't matter what it was. In the latest crash, we know, right? They created the debt time bomb that blew up. Remember, anybody that was breathing got a home loan. Right now, what they did instead is now Wall Street owns hundreds of thousands of them. Somehow that's safer than some banker that makes $13 an hour in California owning 5. It's not. But they mispriced debt on purpose. I mean, that's what they did. They brought interest rates to zero for almost 10 years. And it wasn't just us, right? They got all their central bank buddies and decided to do it together. And then they said, see, we fixed it. We saved us from another Great Depression. And Ben Bernanke wrote one of the worst books of all time. And I know because I tried to read it all. I couldn't. And I'll read anything. I'll read the shampoo bottle in the toilet. And I couldn't get through that thing. But remember what really got us out the last time. It wasn't the Federal Reserve. It wasn't our bankers. It wasn't FDR and his, new policies and all that stuff. It wasn't shutting the banks and forcing everybody to put their deposits into the banks they wanted you to have them in. It wasn't any of that. It was called World War II. See, the United States had tried this central bank bullcrap before. And actually, believe it or not, this is like the third try. Do you know how long the other tries lasted? Because, it seems to me no one really talks about a central bank until 1913, right? They want you to pretend that was the only time. Somehow we don't want to remember, the first 100+ years of this nation. They tried it twice before this. Both times within 20 years, they got rid of it because they were just nothing more than rip-off artists. They're criminals. They actually make us poorer. And the same thing would have happened again. The difference was this time around, unfortunately for all of us, if you actually would take the time to read The Creature from Jekyll Island, or if you don't want to take the time, at least take my word for it. Maybe there's some cliff notes for it. I don't know. But they really essentially bought and married their way into Congress. And it's funny that, they started in 1913. By 1929, there was a stock market crash. And in 20 years to the day, there was the Great Recession, the Great Depression in 1933. And we should have done away with it again. Of course, and then World War II happened, and they got out. See, and I think that was the only thing that really saved them. If we hadn't had World War II, my guess was by the 40s, somebody in Congress would have said, hey, let's get rid of these guys. Just like we did before. Because really all they do is manipulate and make things worse. And now think about where we're at today. Think about it for just a second. Pull your head out of your backside and think about it. workers can't afford to live where they work. First responders can't afford to live where they work. Tech workers can't afford to live where they work. And no American worker can afford to live where they work. How? Right? They tell us the unemployment rate 4.1%. Yet if you go back to the way they did it in 1980, it's 8. Even now. We've got $21 trillion in debt. You know how much debt we had when we created the Federal Reserve? Anybody ever talk about it? You know why no one ever talks about it? Because we didn't have any. We had like a couple $2 billion left over from, I forget which, one of these little wars. And then we added some debt on World War I. Had about all of that paid off by the time the Great Depression hit. Then we added about 150 billion or so, 200 billion during World War II. And it stayed about there until Lyndon Johnson came around, and we created all the welfare programs, even more welfare programs. But it wasn't until even up to 1971. It was only $400 billion. That's it. And what did they do? They took the final blow. Listen, 100 years from now, when there is no more Federal Reserve and we've started over, we'll point to that moment. Go out to allamericangold.com. Look at the cartoon. Look at the picture we have up there. Right? And it's so simple. And when you go throughout history and you think about, what it is that we've decided to do. I don't know why we decided not to get rid of gold and silver as our money, right? You never hear about the great crash of the 1800s because our money was gold and silver. Paper money eventually returns to its intrinsic value. Anyone want to guess what that is? Yeah, zero. I mean, come on, it's just a piece of paper. Maybe, just maybe, you want to have something else besides a piece of paper. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back right after the break. 800-951-0592. U.S. $10 Liberty gold pieces. This is, the half-ounce ones. And the Liberties, 1866 to 1907. $700 today at 800-951-0592. Take the time. Wake up. I know you don't. I know. We don't want it to be, but it just is. They didn't fix it. Here's what they did. Let's misprice debt, and let's just do it for a really long time and hope people don't notice. Now, that may have worked, right? Maybe it could have worked, maybe, if the debt stayed the same. But instead, what's really happened? The debt's more than doubled. Well, they mispriced. Right? And now, right, again, same thing. They've claimed they fixed it. Right? What it was last year's GDP, the real number, right? So we had a couple of threes. It was like 2.3. Okay, that was the number for the year, right? 2.3. And we fixed it. That was fixed, right? And we know better. We know they didn't fix it. Why is it nobody can afford to? I mean, who's left? Right? All the minimum wage workers can't afford a home. Right? All the people working 2-3 jobs can't afford it. Teachers can't afford it. First responders can't afford it. Tech workers can't afford it. I mean, what's left? So now they claim they fixed it, right? Wall Street got horribly mispriced even after the great tax cut that they got. Horribly mispriced. They're raising rates in addition to selling off their balance sheet, so they're double tightening, kind of a la 1937 again. And you know what? People say history repeats. Maybe this is just what's going to happen, right? We're going to go back in to the Great Recession again, and maybe, I don't know, maybe this China thing turns into a real war. Speaking of wars, President Trump last night announced that the United States is going to tack on another $100 billion in tariffs on Chinese-made goods, right, in response to China's response to the Trump initial tariff. China retaliated against the $50 billion in tariffs Trump proposed earlier this week. But here's something funny. Do you want to know how much stuff China actually imports into the United States? Or, I'm sorry, imports from the United States? It's only $131 billion, right? So Trump's like, hey, I got you now. I'm going to put tariffs on $150 billion, and now you're going to be stuck because we only ship $131 billion of stuff to you. It just tells you how lopsided the trade got, right? Unfortunately, China has other weapons, right? They're going to use their currency as a weapon. And then, of course, remember what we talked about the other day, the service sector thing, where we're not sending a physical good over there, but we're doing, banking and all of that. Now fear is that China is going to retaliate there as well. In response to Trump's, I guess, additional $100 billion in trade war and trade tariffs, Chinese state-run news media sparked more concern on another op-ed calling for open rebellion against President Trump. The Chinese are reaching out to Europe and other allies. And again, this is interesting, right? They have power. And the Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, okay, both ministries, Commerce, we understand that. That's the business guy, right? Foreign Affairs, okay, we're dealing with the trade wars. Showing contempt to the unreasonable United States, said that China will fight to the end at any cost. We are fully able to inflict the same losses on the United States as those on China. The U.S. will have to repay whatever loss and harm it has caused on China with huge economic and political costs. Right, this is in their state-run news media. China won't back off. The Chinese society will unite around the party and the government to weather through the hardships, which is unparalleled for the United States. And China will win. That quote has been liked, I guess, on the Chinese equivalent of Twitter like 4 million times. It was, I won't even try to pronounce the guy's name. He was the China's vice minister and the vice commerce minister, so both of them in response. The choice of society to firmly strike back against the United States at any cost. I'd call that a trade war. 800-951-0592. Patriot Radio News Hour. Final segment coming up. Final segment, Patriot Radio News Hour. 800-951-0592. U.S. $10 Liberties at $700 a piece. I'll tell you what. Buy 20 or more, $690. At 800-951-0592. It's time to get your house in order. And I know it's tough. Right? I mean, April 15th, right around the corner and all that stuff. And we had Easter and spring break if you got kids and all that stuff. I'm going to tell you right now, not going to end very well. How can I be so certain? And really, just look at it. Right? We're going to run a $1 trillion, good number, $1 trillion deficit during the good times, right? Well, they're tightening. We're running trillion plus, and really, it's really closer to $2 trillion. And by 2020, we're going to be there. They tried to claim victory, and they mispriced debt and then doubled the amount of debt as their way of saying we win, right? Which is idiotic. I mean, just common sense tells you that's dumb. Common sense told you too big to fail, and the risk to taking down Wall Street. The reason why they had to, step in, because all of Wall Street was going to be wiped out because the financial institutions were too big. So what did they do? They made them bigger. They claimed they fixed it. Bought up all the houses around. There are no houses out there. We don't have a housing shortage. There are plenty of 500, 600, 700, 800, 900 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, $10 million homes out there. Plenty of them. You know what there isn't? Not any $100,000 homes, $120,000 homes, $150,000 homes, $200,000. Right? There's no homes that anyone can afford. Why? Where'd they go? You know where they are. Right? The American dream. Listen, Eric was right way back in the day when eventually we're going to want it all back. And guess what? People want it back. People want to actually be able to afford to live where they work. People actually do want full-time employment. They do. I know they say they don't. Right? Because what else, right? You got to try to convince them that they don't want to work full-time. Look at all the freedom you can have. You can't have freedom when you got to work 3 jobs. 800-951-0592. Apparently, Larry Kudlow's pile of goats turtling into a pile of, you know what. Dow's down about 400 points right now. Again, who knows? You got to wait till the last, 30 minutes, hour. Gold's up 7, 13.31 in change. Silver is unchanged right now, $16.37. U.S. $10 Liberties 1 through 19 at 700. 20 or more at 690. Rolled Silver Eagles are up today. They're going to just keep going up. 390 a roll. 800-951-0592. I know. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll talk again on Monday.